A decade without occupation, the East Timorese have paid a high price for their freedom. Most are still struggling to make a living, like Ricardina Godinho, whose husband was killed in the violence that followed the vote for independence from Indonesia in 1999.
I feel sad in the last 10 years. I will only feel happiness if I have a decent life. I make a living by selling vegetables. I'm not happy selling vegetables. I've always sold vegetables. There is no change.
East Timor has always been the pride of the United Nations, the first nation the UN built from scratch. Billions of dollars were pumped into the tiny country. Enough, in theory, to give every single East Timorese a good life. But reality is different. East Timor has received $8.8 billion in international aid during the past decade. This includes money spent on peacekeeping forces. That amounts to more than $8,000 for every man, woman, a child, one of the highest per capita rates of international aid. But the aid has had little impact. Between 2001 and 2007, poverty increased by 14%. 522,000 people, or nearly half the population, lived below the poverty line. 60% of children under 5 are malnourished. And 40% of young people between 15 and 27 are unemployed. President José Ramos Horta says that even if half of the international assistance was spent wisely, East Timor would have been lifted out of poverty.
If that money, $5 billion, were to have been mostly spent in East Timor, it would have transformed this country economically and socially. We would have a far better infrastructures. Our telecommunications, electricity would be far better. Poverty would have been all but eliminated. This is not the case.
According to the investigation of an independent East Timorese institute, most of the money is spent on UN salaries, consultancy fees, security and administration. Only 10% has made it into the East Timorese economy, something that needs to be thoroughly investigated, according to President Horta.
I think the critical issue here is the UN expenditures itself, here in Timor-Leste, and the bilateral or multilateral donor assistance to East Timor, total amount, let's say $5 billion, where this money has been invested. That is what a question mark that requires reassessment by the donors.
But the UN claims East Timor has made a lot of progress since 1999. Atul Kare, who has headed the UN operation in East Timor since 2006, says the figures are wrong.
In the last 10 years, with their own efforts, in partnership, assisted by the international community, this country largely, yes, has been a success.
But to Duarte Beremau, it certainly doesn't feel like it. He is illiterate and doesn't know his own age. 10 years ago, he voted for independence with high expectations. A decade later, his dream, that of most other East Timorese, has yet to come true. Vaessen, Al Jazeera.